5-0 unanimously. Now on to item number 5 on our agenda, public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item within the jurisdiction of the SJVIA not appearing on today's agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Any members of the public have any comments today on any items that aren't on our agenda? All right, I don't see any. So now we will move on to approval of the consent agenda. Any members have any items they want to pull for discussion from consent? Any members of the public like to hear any consent items? No? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval of consent?
All right.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Going smooth. Receive, item number 7, receipt update from Auditor Treasurer on cash flow projections.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Ricky Santiana, the Auditor Controller. We're going over the cash flow projections.
Perfect, please.
So the average weekly PPO claims for this period were at 1.28 million. We saw a spike in the actual average cash flows in the middle of March. That was caused by the $7 million for the settlement. Next slide. So the cash position was pulled as of 4/26. All the loans and the interest was paid as of February 1st. So the current cash position, we're in line to meet all of the debt obligations. And any questions on the cash flows?
Any questions for Ricky? No, I guess we're good on that. Oh,
Well, you did cover it. I just think it's important, very important to highlight, all loans and interest payable were,
All loans and interest payable were taken care of and repaid to the counties that issued them as of February 1st, 2022. So not only did we have a spike in cash flow from a settlement, we also were able to pay back all of our loans to the sponsoring agencies regardless of that. So I think that's great to point out and highlight.
great point. All right, item number 8, receive update from Auditor Treasurer on SJVIA financials as of February 28th, 2022.
Okay, so starting with the net position as of February 28th, we have total assets of $26.5 million, total liabilities of $17.4 million. That leaves us with a total net position of about $9 million. Next slide. So looking at the actuals versus the budgeted receipts and disbursements, we had total receipts budgeted of $60.7 million. Actuals were $49.2 million. Total disbursements budget of $57.2 million and actuals of $48 million, which led to a change in reserve of $2.2 million. Next slide. This is an analysis of the administration, wellness, and other fees. We had total receipts of $81,000, total disbursements of $164,000, which led to a change in reserve of $82,000. Next slide. And we're looking at the cash flows by month through February 28th. So we started with a beginning cash balance in January of $24.8 million. Total receipts through February were $39.7 million. Total disbursements through February were $38.4 million, which left us with an ending cash balance through February of $26.2 million. We had outstanding checks of $145,000. So total cash at the end of February was $26 million. And that's all for the financials. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments from the board? All right, I think we're good. Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you.
Item number 9, receive consultants' medical, dental, and vision experience reports through February 2022 with update on projected plan experience, surplus accumulation, and projections. Board.
Okay. Yes, good morning, Board and Darm with Keenan. And just want to go ahead and go through the report and highlight some of the areas. This report is for the first 2 months on our experience. We have on the medical plan about a $291,000 deficit position, and for once it's not really the EPO plan. So if there's a positive and a deficit, that would be it. On the dental, we're sitting with a $180,000 accumulation, such that our net position on our self-funded programs is about $110,000 deficit position. Both counties had a loss ratio for the first 2 months over 100%, and that's a total cost loss ratio. County of Fresno at 101.7, and County of Tulare trying as hard as they can to outdo them, did 103 for a 102.2 average. The other programs are doing well. Based off the auditor's report, I am a little concerned because the auditor's report kind of went through the end of April. I haven't seen March or April's claims yet. They haven't hit March. I should be getting soon. April's claims I won't get until the end of May. But my concern is this: with the $7 million deficit settlement, we should be well above our position relative to our reserve accumulation, and we're only about 1.6 million, which means that either March and April are big deficit months, but we've used about 5.4 of that 7 just to pay claims. We'll have to look how the rest of the year goes, but if that's an indication, if that's in fact what happened, one of the things that we'll have to do when we underwrite it is I'll be looking for guidance how we handle any recovery of that $7 million in the rates as well too. Other things to keep in mind is this year is the first year that we reduced margin requirements on the plan. If you recall, it was the direction of the board to reduce margin, kind of get the rates a little bit lower because we had fulfilled our 3-month stabilization reserve. Of course, we can't always predict accurately what claims are going to do, and 2021 was a kind of an ugly year with a lot of COVID claims settling that year that were either put off in 2020, and we've seen that continue through the first quarter of 2022 as well. So we'll be keeping a close eye on these things. The good thing is our program is working the way it is. We have the reserves in place to pay those adverse claim activities. We'll look to put more cost containment features in to see if we can control those things a little bit better. But overall, we'll just stay the course. I'm anticipating at this point we will have to put a little bit more margin in. If you recall, last year in the renewal, County of Fresno reduced their margin from 3 to 1.5%. County of Tulare, I believe, went from 2 to 0. I think it was from from 2% to 0%, so no margin. We just went strictly there. And we have trend built in, but the trend, I would say, was our internal trend, what we had experienced in the past, as opposed to industry trend. So we probably understated trend a little bit as well too, and that's the outcome this year. So we'll look to rectify those things going forward. Yeah. I'm going to be proud to announce that through February, the EPO was in a $13,000 surplus position, because that's usually the one that gets the burden.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. You know, looking at the chart here, from 18 to 22, if you look at the plans that have really held their own and carried their weight, it's been the PPO, the high deductible health plan, and the EPO. While it is exciting that they are finally back in a positive position, I mean, that thing's been a dog and dragging this thing the whole way until this point, Borden. And so I'm a bit hesitant to react too quickly with the high deductible health plan and the PPO, and make changes going forward when it's really been the EPO that's put us in this position that we're in.
I agree. That's a fair assessment. And if you look on that first bar chart way to the right, you'll see that 2021 ended in overall position of about 1.4 million. And if we go to the County of Fresno chart, which is the second one, it should say County of Fresno 2018 through 2022 through February. If we go to that one, you see that 1 million was County of Fresno's deficit in 2021, driven in part, we kind of let each county do their own program.
Yeah.
And we are working very hard to turn that around. We have several strategies. We introduced the 2 other EPO plans to minimize. That seems to be helping a little bit, but it's still a little too premature to make any general judgments whether that's the right direction or if we need to do more, including thoughts of elimination.
Sure.
But those are all on the table. We are looking. It is too much to do all at once relative to making that stand on its own. And keep in mind, we also have a reserve in the Kaiser parity that goes towards the EPO plan. So this is just the raw deficit position here. So from that perspective, it's a multi-year strategy, but in my conversations with the County of Fresno, there's a desire to make that one stand on its own too.
Well, and I get that it's a multi-year strategy. I get that it's a different program, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that it's kind of an interesting setup where you've got a little bit of reserve over in the Kaiser plan that kind of cross-subsidize. I mean,
Right. That's what it is, yeah.
getting to a point of ultimate standalone to just make a determination as to whether or not we should keep this plan and have it as an option, or if we just need to get rid of it. I mean,
Yeah.
4 years is a pretty good trend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you, so. Okay. Outside of that, I kind of gave the narrative. I do want to go to the last page of the report, which outlines the budget and the actuals year-to-date. One of the things where when we only get two months in, we're missing the third month, such as March. March, we typically get the prescription drug rebates, which are worth about $700,000. So those are things that will, but as you can see, our budget, let me get to that page. We've budgeted on the year about $4.1 million in basically margin stabilization reserve buildup. And, for over the first 2 months, because of claims and other activities, we only accumulated $25,000. So we're well under where we are. We knew this is going to be a year where our budget's going to be down because of the rate adjustments that we made, and then we're experiencing higher than expected claims right now. And we'll be looking at different strategies, how we can contain those relative to costs. So more to come And our next board meeting will contain experience reports through May, and also will give us our first look at the preliminary renewal as well, too. So we'll have 5 months of claims at that point. Any other questions, or?
Any other director questions or comments on this item? All right, well, we're just going to jump right into item number 10, receive consultant's preliminary report on the request for proposal RFP for a plan administrator for the self-funded medical plans and pharmacy benefit manager. So,
Thank you. I'll be delivering that one, too. We went out to bid. We asked all 4 major carriers for bids, Aetna, UHC, Anthem, and Blue Shield. We also went out to the TPA market, which typically rent one of the networks from the major carriers, and there were 4 vendors there that we went to as well. And then on the PBM side, there's the carriers, our pharmacy programs, as well as we went to I think 4 PBMs in particular. I'm sorry, 5. We did get 2 declines. Let me just get to the right page here. I apologize. Yeah. Yes, we had a decline from net impact on the PBMs, and OptumRx submitted their proposal via Health Comp, which is a TPA, so we didn't get necessarily a standalone from them, but in conjunction with the TPA. And I'm here today to kind of report on the preliminary and let you know where we are going forward. What we did, some of the most important features are they qualified from a claims perspective? In other words, a lot of what's driven is, are their network discounting going to be sufficient? And is there going to be much disruption if we move from one carrier to the next? In other words, are members going to have to change their doctors and their providers, their hospitals, and so forth? That's always a concern. So we did network discounting analysis, we did disruption analysis, we did geo-access analysis, and on both the medical and on the prescription drug side. And I kind of want to share just some of the results of that. We'll go to the first chart. Oh, I'm sorry. And we had a 125-page questionnaire that we had everybody respond to.
And they actually filled it out?
They did, and some of them were really good about following instructions, some less, but we eventually got through it. It was 125 questions, and really it was to see, do they meet the minimum qualifications to take care of them. You can see the different areas that we looked in. General information, that wasn't even, we didn't rank that because that was just where's your headquarters, stuff like that. Organizational strength, plan sponsors, administrative support, account management, member quality of care, resources and services, access to care and networks, cost proposal, plan designs, and then we totaled everything at the bottom. On a score of 1 to 3, you can see that everybody is kind of in that same range. So from a questionnaire perspective, we did not feel we needed to eliminate anybody, with the exception there was one PBM, pharmacy benefit manager, that didn't fill out certain components and so forth, and that we didn't need to continue going forward with them. They did provide the area, other parts of their RFP, but the RFP was very clear, fill out these exhibits. And it's learn your lesson, fill out the exhibits we ask you to, and don't have us go fishing for where that information is. And especially all other candidates were able to follow those instructions and fill out the exhibits that we required of them for the exercises. So from a questionnaire perspective, outside of the one, there was nothing else. We just felt that we didn't need to eliminate anybody from that. So they'll move forward from general qualifications and the care that they would be able to give. The next slide, or the next chart, I should say, is the geo-access. And I will tell you this, that our intent is to, it's probably going to be about a 2-hour, and I wouldn't necessarily call it an interview like a finalist interview, but an interview to validate, make sure we understand their RFP correctly, because it's interesting. This is the geo-access report, and I think some of our vendors were a little over-aggressive because we asked how many, by zip code for each county, how many providers do you have in that county? And you can see the different categories: primary care, internist, OBGYN, pediatrician, mental health, substance abuse, other specialists, urgent care, outpatient facility, and mental health and substance abuse facilities and hospitals. If you stay there to the right, I'm super excited to ask some of them, where do they find 18 hospitals in Fresno County? I'm not familiar with them, and if they are, we'd like to approach them to see if we can get a better deal. So I know there's a little bit of gamesmanship that goes on these geo-access, but all in all, I think even if you look at the carrier that was probably most honest, they're all covering pretty much very close to the same providers. That was further demonstrated on the next chart. What we had them do is we gave them a list of all the charges for 2021. And we said, hey, and we give them enough information to identify the charge by provider. We gave them tax ID codes and so forth, such that we said, hey, if this were you, let us know if they're in your network or out of your network. And you can see here kind of the results where Anthem came in at 93% of charges were in network, and so forth. So there's a very good, Aetna's in there twice because they gave 2 different networks. The one, the CP2, or I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. We used that over the other one because it seemed to have a better match. Interestingly, when we also looked at the charges, but also we looked at it from a provider perspective, the in-network pattern was greater. In other words, we would have less out-of-network claims from some of the other carriers than we currently have with Anthem, which I thought was unusual too, and we're going to ask them about that as well as we go forward. But all in all, strong numbers as far as financial, the charges that they'd be covered on in-network, and again, pretty darn strong on the in-network provider encounters too. From this study here, with Anthem being at 85.1 on the provider encounter, and everybody else coming in pretty much above that, we know that there'd be minimal disruption to the membership if we made a change. Any questions? And down below, you actually see the dollar amounts that were in-network versus out-of-network, and the provider encounters that were in and out of network. So it was quite a large file that we asked them to do, and really appreciate the carrier's support on that as well. On the next page, it's one to have everybody in your network, but what's the actual discount going to look like? And so we asked them to basically show us what your discount would be. If I can draw your attention, if we go to the next page, up there. Yeah, that one. If there's the first set of numbers is in network, the next set of numbers are out of network, and then we have unable to process. So for one reason or another, there might have been some charges there as well. And then finally, you have total all charges. And if you look at the total line in that section, You see, for instance, Anthem had a 63.8% average discount for all services. That's really the number. Aetna, 59.9%. Blue Shield, 57.8%, and UMR, which is United Healthcare as well, 60.8%. All within kind of a 3-point area. Blue Shield maybe lagging there a little bit. We will come back. I didn't think the differences in discounts was sufficient enough to say any of them are eliminated at this point in time. I think we'll have to look at their overall cost proposal as well, and that's in the next phase that we'll look at that, because I will tell you, we gave ourselves about 3 weeks to do the analysis, and we really needed about 6 weeks. So I wanted to make sure we did the disruption, the discounting first, and come back to you with a recommendation as to who the finalist, or not the finalist, but who the selected vendor will be after we do a little bit more vetting on some of their proposals. Some of the carriers gave me as many as 4 options. So if you can imagine, you got 11 vendors that you're looking at 4 options, you got 44 different scenarios that you could potentially be looking at relative to their pricing. So that was it on the medical side. On the prescription drug side, we went through similar exercises. We looked at a disruption analysis as well too. These are just the results on this page here. To the right, you can see the One Delta Health Systems, Drexy didn't provide any of that information, so therefore they were eliminated. That's the one I mentioned. But if we go to the hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. If we look at, as we go through here, for instance, the first part is the EPO, and the reason we separated out EPO and PPO from high deductible health plan is currently the high deductible health plan prescription drugs are administered through Anthem, and the EPO, PPO are through Empirics. Well, you can see, we wanted to see what's the disruption. You can see here the counts of how many drugs would have no change, how many would have a positive change, how many would have a negative change to them, and it was very, very limited. So that, and if you look further on the discounting arrangement that we had with each one, we didn't want to eliminate anybody further. So we're moving forward. We're going to be doing in-depth interviews. I wouldn't call them finalist interviews yet. I would call them just basically keen in doing deeper analysis, making sure we get their information right. The last thing I want is someone saying you misinterpreted the data that we gave you, and that's why we were less favorable. So we're going to do that, followed by checking references, and then we'll work with staff to do finalist interviews from that point as we work through and come back with a recommendation in July for carriers going forward.
And Board, and I would just offer that for both the plan, as we go through the RFP process and the prescription benefit, if you need board members, I volunteer Supervisor Mendez and also Supervisor Magsig to participate in those interviews.
I'm sure they would gladly accept.
Absolutely.
But thank you. Actually, that was one of the questions. We always welcome the board to any process there, especially when it comes to finalist interviews. If there is an interest level, we certainly welcome your participation. We know we'll have that of staff and of our Keenan folks as well, too. Any other questions?
Other questions on this item? All right, thanks, Borden.
Thank you.
Item number 11, receive consultant's report on Empirics 2021 pharmacy utilization.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Rob Welker. He's from Keenan Pharmacy Services. He's newly assigned to us, and he's prepared the reports here.
Right on.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, Rob.
Good morning, Board. Thanks for having me. My name's Rob Welker. Like Borden said, I'm with the KPS team. I'm going to go through the consultants report, talk about the 2021 SJVI clinical financials for the year. We'll talk through just we'll talk about where the spend went, talk about specialty, we'll talk about through the rebate situation, and really get into just the details of the consultant's report. We did add to the agenda the larger deck. I'm certainly capable and available to answer any questions. It's a pretty large deck. We can certainly go through it as well. I'll leave that up to the group, but if it's okay, I'll go ahead and move forward. We'll start with the consultant's report, and then we'll just go from there.
Please.
Generally like the executive summary.
You bet. I'll keep it to the executive summary then, no problem at
Larry
all.
might go through the whole deck, but he can do that on his own.
Larry, call me, I'll help you out. We'll go through it together. All right. All right, good deal. So 2021, we're looking at $20,472,962 for a total plan cost. Tulare made up approximately 8.4 of that plan cost. Fresno is right at 12 million. The cost is, attributed to several different factors, inflation being one of them, utilization in particular in the specialty field, and I'll go through that and kind of what that looks like and give maybe a couple of whys and how that happened. The next piece of it is just the channel summary, so 98.61% of all scripts are being filled at the retail environment, really mainly the retail generic and retail 90, which is fantastic. That's what we want to see as far as savings. Is we see larger savings and then actually see more adherence, which is good for our members as far as getting their 90-day medication and keeping them more adherent to their drugs. Generic dispensing rates, so for the retail GDR is what we'll refer to it as, is it did go down just a little bit this year. Previous year, last year we were at 84.49, this year at 81.42, and that's the retail GDR. And really the reason behind that is that we've got to take into consideration 2021, and you'll hear me reference COVID a couple times throughout this presentation, but we do have the vaccines that were filtered in through this particular GDR calculation. Typically, what we're seeing with our book when it comes to the vaccinations, once you pull that out of the mix, you see that GDR pop back up to pretty much where we were at before, about that 2 to 3%. And then the retail 90 is 88.93, which is up, which is great. The male GDR, again, that's up significantly, and we really want to see that, and that's fantastic. All right, so let's slide down to the specialty. So we are looking at, in 2021, we had $8 million in total specialty spend, up from 6.1 from the previous 2020. Again, we've seen that there's a couple different reasons for that, and when I get into just the high level, if you will, of the therapeutic class and the indications, I think that you'll see where those costs came from. The number one call out here is really just we've seen an increase in utilization. There's more scripts. Specialty medications are expensive. Working with Borden and team here over the next couple weeks of implementing and talking through some strategies and how we can better address that in the near future. The clinical cost drivers, very common here. So you're seeing your anti-inflammatories, anti-diabetics, and dermatologicals. Very common, typically your top three, so nothing really out of the ordinary there. Okay, as I mentioned before, so the clinical cost drivers from a drug level, I think this is really kind of reflects back to the points I was making just a moment ago when we're talking about why we saw a little bit of an increase in some of these drugs. I'll draw your attention to a few, just specifically Trulicity, Ozempic. You see we've got some new users. We've got 14 new users for Trulicity, 48 for Ozempic, extremely high cost drugs. They are anti-diabetics, revert back to the COVID situation. Unfortunately, 2021 is, this is related to COVID as well. We got more folks at home, unfortunately, not living as a healthy lifestyle as we'd all like to live. So we are seeing an increase in that. And the second component of that, within 2021, these particular drugs, they came out with a new dosage for these drugs. So versus taking one a day, they now can take the dose once a week, which is fantastic. But alongside that becomes the adherence part. So members are more likely to take their medications when they only have to do it once a week versus once daily, which is great that it's member adherence and overall better health for our members. All right, so let me slide down to the rebates. Typo there, it is 2021 rebates. It is not 2020 rebates. My apologies there. We are looking at, so first quarter was $663,000, second $694,000, third $751,000. As of late last night, we are finalizing the audit for Q4. I do have that number for you as far as expectation for that particular rebate. It's right at $700,000, puts us at about $2.77 million for rebates that will be paid out. That is $200,000 above last year's rebate calculation. Clinical management, really, this is just partnering with our Empirics, PBM, what we're doing behind the scenes as far as managing prior authorizations, step therapy, managing the specialty drugs, is we've given a guarantee here. 1.5 million is the typical guarantee. It was prorated to 1.25. We are blowing that out of the water. It's at 5.3 million at the moment, which is approximately 4 million above, which is fantastic. That's just really helps keep the costs down. It's reviewing every specialty medication. It's making sure that members are getting the medications they need and getting them appropriately. Last but not least, I had made just a quick comment. We are finalizing the audit, so the KPS team is working through the audit. We are going through all of the 2021 scripts that have been processed, really making sure that the rebates are paid out appropriately, make sure we're hitting all the AWP, the wholesale pricing guarantees that are tied to it, ultimately at the end of the day to make sure that everything is done properly throughout the year.
Cool.
Can I answer any questions?
Thanks, Rob. Any director questions or comments for Rob? All right, and Larry, you're going to go over the full deck with him later, after we've adjourned.
Larry doesn't play with the full day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. All right. Now, item number 12, SJVIA Director, questions, comments, announcements. Anybody? Anything? No? That was easy?
Sure, I will just.
Say real quick, it's a quick meeting with Director Magzig not here.
Great point.
I'll just say
We'll
that.
convey that message to him, won't we, Brian? All right. Now, Brian's favorite item, 13, adjournment. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you to our consultants. Good job.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.